Hope everyone is back from break. We're going to get ready and get started. I think we've had a great conference so far. We've heard from 6 outstanding speakers, and we have 2 more left. Our next speaker today is Liz Chudoba. Liz is the Water Quality Monitoring Initiative Director for the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. She graduated from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington with an MS in Marine Science and from the Vermont Law School with a Master's of Environmental Law and Policy. For a short time, she was, to my great fortune and probably her great misfortune, a summer intern for me while I was working at DEQ. Liz manages the Chesapeake Monitoring Cooperative, an initiative to integrate community science data in the Chesapeake Bay Program Partnership. She also manages other water quality monitoring projects. Thank you, Liz, for telling us about thank you for coming on to talk about the CMC program.
Thanks, James, and it was a pleasure working with you at DEQ.
It wasn't.
So thanks for having me on today, and thanks everyone for sticking through and joining us for this last session of the day today. So I'm going to be talking about a really cool project that we were able to do within the CMC, or the Chesapeake Monitoring Cooperative, and ways that we've been able to really use the data collected through this network of community-based volunteer monitoring programs in ways that we didn't really expect. So next slide. So just to give a little bit of background, I assume most people have heard of us by now, but in case you haven't, the Chesapeake Monitoring Cooperative, or CMC as we call it, was started in 2015 through a cooperative agreement between the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay and the Chesapeake Bay Program. And we have 4 partner organizations: the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, the Isaac Walton League of America, the Alliance for Aquatic Resource Monitoring, and the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science. And those 4 partner organizations act as the service providers, working with all of the individual monitoring groups throughout the entire Chesapeake Bay watershed. So we each work in different jurisdictions, and we work with chemical monitoring groups and benthic macroinvertebrate monitoring groups as well. And the goal is to bring together all of these very diverse volunteer-based water quality monitoring programs into one centralized database using similar methods so that it can be used by the Chesapeake Bay Program Partnership and by the state agencies. Next slide, please. So again, the goal of this is to bring together all of this data so that it can be used by the Bay Program. And the reason that this came to be is because you can see in this map, the volunteer and community-based monitoring programs are in the light green and dark black sites. And the Chesapeake Bay Program monitoring sites are in that kind of blue color. And those focus mostly on the bay itself and the major tributaries, whereas the volunteer collected data focuses on the headwaters and some smaller tributaries. So combining these 2 data sets can really give us a bigger picture and a better picture of the health of the Chesapeake Bay watershed as a whole. Next slide, please. So in order to classify data and to make data collected in Pennsylvania equivalent and standardized with data collected in Virginia, we created a tiered framework system that consists of 3 tiers. The bottom tier is tier 1, which is used for educational purposes and kind of those ecosystem health screenings. As you go up the pyramid, you get increased QA standards, increased time, rigor, and expense. So tier 2 gets into report cards and targeting of management actions. Those typically are taken with calibrated equipment, again, getting into that time and QA standards. And then our tier 3 data is actually audited by the Bay Program and considered equivalent to the state and federal agency collected data. So it can actually be used in regulatory water quality assessments. And for the first time this year, the Bay program is running their 2018 to 2020 assessment right now, and they are using volunteer collected data from the CMC in that assessment this year, which is really exciting. And currently our Tier 3 program is only in tidal areas because that is what is used in the assessment. Next slide, please. And then all of this kind of comes together with the Chesapeake Data Explorer, which is our crown jewel of the CMC and what houses all of the amazing data that's collected through all of these volunteer-based programs. We have over 450, or no, not over, almost 450,000 data points covering 2,500 stations. We have data from all 7 Bay jurisdictions, and we have about 116 participating organizations that are uploading data. And the website is listed here, and I can throw that in the chat box as well after this presentation. And so this really, the Data Explorer is really the place where we can now utilize this data in a broader context. You can go, you can visualize the data on the home screen as seen here on this picture. You can query and download any of the data in the system as well. And so now that we're able to kind of see this all together and use this all together, next slide, Matt, we were able to actually, we were presented with a really cool opportunity back in 2020 where we actually hosted a hackathon. So we partnered with Booz Allen Hamilton, and a special thanks to their Women in Data Science team and their 501 Office Green team. And we partnered with them to host a virtual hackathon called Hack the Bay in order to take all of this community collected data, put it together with Bay program collected data, and really start to see how that changed the landscape of the Chesapeake Bay and our understanding of the Chesapeake Bay and the watershed. So we originally intended this event to be an in-person event on Earth Day 2020, celebrating the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, but we all know that COVID did not make that feasible. So we switched it to a virtual event. And this is the first time that Booz Allen Hamilton had held a virtual hackathon. So it was all a very new experience for all of us. And we held that on August 3rd through September 20th of 2020. Next slide, please. So again, the goal of this was really to crowdsource solutions and challenges faced by the CMC and explore innovative ways that we can look at this data as a whole, together as a unit across the Bay watershed, and foster those collaborative environments for addressing these really complex solutions. Next slide, please. So the hackathon consisted of 4 different challenge tracks. The first challenge focused on developing a restoration case study. So this was really looking at data over time and comparing that to some type of land use change or policy to see if we could really start to parse out any water quality indicators that would reflect those policy changes. The second challenge was identifying data gaps. So this is really aimed at doing a second look at the prioritization report that the CMC did in 2016 when we got started, and continuing to assess where we still have spatial and temporal and parameter-based data gaps. The third challenge was modeling water pollution. And this branched off of another hackathon that Booz Allen actually participated in, where they were modeling total nitrogen loads throughout the Bay watershed. And then challenge 4 was designing a water quality report card. So this was trying to get at the social benefit aspect of the data collecting and how we can really better engage the public in broadcasting the data and making it relevant to their needs. I will say that was the most broad topic of all 4 of them. And we actually did not get any completed projects from that challenge, which we kind of assumed going into it, but we did get some really creative, partially scoped solutions for that challenge. So overall, we received 20 projects total. That included the 10 complete projects and then the 10 creative, partially scoped solutions. Next slide. So I'm just going to go through a few of the submissions that we got and kind of what it means to us and what we're kind of doing from here with these submissions. So one really exciting submission was this project on the South River in Virginia. So this is in Southwest Virginia on Canada Run in the South River. And this group focused on temperature, pH, and conductivity over a 3-year period. And they broke it down by seasons and kind of tracked those changes over time for those 3 parameters. And what's really of interest here is that they also did some digging in the policy and found that this watershed in particular was one of the highest priority watersheds in the George Washington National Forest and region, and that the data that they analyzed showed that over this period of 5 years, they analyzed a period of 5 years, not 3 years, my apologies, they did see significant improvements in the conductivity and pH scores, and also a slight decrease in the water temperature, which is also a good thing that we're looking for in these headwater streams, because it was on an increased temperature trend and then started to decrease. So, you know, the data in and of itself is kind of leaning towards there might be some link to policy. Obviously, we need to do a deeper dive into, you know, the other nuances that could go into this, but it's a good kind of first step that this data might actually be able to show, might be nuanced enough to show us some trends based on policy decisions. Next slide, please. So one of our other submissions that we got, which is also a really cool and innovative idea, is just to look at temperature trends over time, which may not seem super innovative, but when you think about it, you know, temperature is one of the most robustly monitored parameters across the watershed, but we haven't really looked at it as a whole across the watershed. So it was really cool. This was just one girl who was working on this project, and it was super impressive what she was able to come up with over a few weeks' time in order to look at these temperature trends across different seasons and across the Bay watershed as a whole. So this is, again, a more exploratory approach to data analysis at this scale, and so something that no one has really done to this point with this type of data set and combined with the Bay program data. So this definitely opened up a lot more questions and also pointed out some additional gaps that we should maybe try to fill with some temperature data in order to get a more robust data set. And I'll talk about how we're expanding on this project in a little bit. Next slide. So one of the modeling projects that we got submission for, again, built off of a model created for a different hackathon by the Booz Allen team, modeling total nitrogen through the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And I am not even going to pretend like I know anything about modeling, because I do not. So I will, again, put the link in the chat box to the YouTube videos that beautifully explain what this model means. But really the highlight here is that, you know, this team worked on a model for 6 weeks with a data set that they were not familiar with, and really came up with some similar ideas and outcomes that we know from the models that we've been working on since the 80s and 90s that are very complicated models and take in a lot of information. So what we really took away from this type of challenge was that, you know, maybe we need to look at, you know, the new code and the new approaches and just different ways of thinking about modeling that might help us kind of, again, assess these different nutrient pathways throughout the watershed. Next slide. All right, so overall, we were super excited about the participation and the amazing projects that we received. We were, again, blown away that in 6 weeks, people could come up with, you know, full-blown watershed scale models of, you know, these nutrients in the bay. We engaged over 400 people from all over the world. So regardless of the actual projects that we received, you know, we just engaged a brand new audience that we had never engaged with before and now knows a little bit more about the Chesapeake Bay watershed and some of the issues that are being faced here. And we started to gain insights about how this data can be used. Again, it opened up a lot more questions, and we have a lot of lessons learned from this project. And moving forward, you know, one of the things that we really need to do is refine those questions. So again, since we hadn't done anything like this before, we kind of threw out these big, lofty, I don't know, look at the data, see what you see. And now that we kind of have some of these projects and have these really creative folks who were who put these projects together, you know, we have different paths that we can go down now and ask more specific questions, get some more refined data sets, even start thinking about additional data sets that we can add to the Data Explorer to kind of fill in some of these gaps. I will say there was a challenge working virtually that I think it was really nice that folks had a lot more time. So I think we got some projects submitted that were a lot further along than what we would have gotten in a one-day like blitz hackathon. But there are some challenges when you're going in between, you know, us as the data collectors and the data scientists. And I think some folks were getting caught up along the way that we could have very easily, if we were in person, could have gotten over some of those hurdles and gotten a little bit farther down the line. But overall, it was a great project, and we were really excited to find out all of these really cool solutions that people came up with. And then next slide. And then lastly, just to touch on the continued work that we are doing with these data sets. So Anne is with UMPSES, and she has been continuing to work with the temperature data and kind of refining, looking at these trends over time with the data sets that we have available. So we started refining this, thinking about water temperature data across the watershed as a whole. And we started brainstorming some ways that this could be helpful. And so we were looking at temperature trends over time. We ended up breaking this into the upper watershed region in Pennsylvania and New York, which is the left-hand box at the top left-hand corner, and then the lower watershed, which is the bottom, or which is the right-hand picture up at the top there. And, you know, we were able to start seeing kind of some seasonal trends and some trends over time with the water temperature data. And this has really come up showing us that we really do need to start getting our historic data back in the system. Pennsylvania and New York has been pushing historic data. So they have some data sets in the system, in the Data Explorer, that are 20 years old, whereas down in the lower watershed, I haven't been quite as on top of it getting our historic data in there. So our data sets don't go back as far. So I think that's one thing that we're going to start working on in order to kind of push this work forward. And then I also really just want to point out this amazing work that we started working on with Wesley Irwin, who is a high school student in Maryland. And he is working in Minecraft, looking at ways that we can visualize water quality data within a water column. So this picture kind of represents what it would look like if you dove down into a waterway and kind of visualized a depth profile sample of dissolved oxygen. And so he just kind of did this as a summer project. And so we're thinking about doing another hackathon in sort of a Minecraft space to think of different ways that we can visualize data and also, again, connect to different audiences. So we're really thinking that this might be a good way that we could connect to school-age kids and really give them some tangible things that they can see about the data, and then also ways that they can actually pull some real data out of these visualizations and play with it on their own as well. So next slide. That is all I have for today. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Liz. I can tell you, coming from a DEQ, we dealt with a lot of data, and I'm kind of wishing we did a hackathon ourselves. We do have some questions, and in fact, on that vein, got a question here of how do you engage Hack the Bay participants, and how did you share any of these results with the groups that collected the data? It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, so Booz Allen Hamilton did most of our Hack the Bay engagement with participants. We went to a lot of universities. We went to a lot of their networks to pull data scientists mostly, because that is not who is within the CMC network for the most part. So Booz Allen Hamilton did most of the outreach for the actual hackathon participants. We told all of our CMC network throughout the entire experience that it was happening. All of the presentations that we did were hosted openly, that folks could still come and hear, what was going on. And then we did broadcast the results to our network after the event, and they're hosted on the CMC website. So you can still go to the CMC website, and I'll throw the link in the chat box. But you can see all of the YouTube videos that all of the participants put together. And there's GitHubs for each of the projects too. So if you're interested in kind of seeing what they did, again, not my realm, I don't understand any of that coding, but if you're interested in picking up any of it, feel free to visit those GitHubs and check it out.
It's fantastic. Some people in chat here are kind of geeking out about the Minecraft visualization. They were kind of wondering if there was plans for using these visualizations for educational purposes or for monitoring.
Yes, so this is like a brand new thing. I mean, we just started working on this a few weeks ago when Wes came to us and was like, hey, is this even like a thing that would be helpful? And we all were like, yes. So we're all geeking out on it too, and still trying to figure out what it'll look like. But some of the things that we've thrown around are trying to create educational videos. So having, a well-known education center on the Chesapeake Bay kind of recreated in Minecraft. And you can, again, my understanding is very limited, but you can create flights that kind of go through Minecraft and video. So you could see, what we're kind of envisioning is maybe creating a video where you'd fly out to this education center, kind of dive down in the water, see these visualizations of the data, and then also be able to actually like retrieve data. So it would kind of mimic taking a classroom out into the field and collecting the data without actually having to take a whole classroom out to a waterway. And then we could have some Excel files with those data points, embedded in the video or available for the teachers afterwards that the kids could then take and play with on their own. So that's kind of our first thought. And again, I think our next step is to do kind of a mini hackathon, just kind of exploring the different visualization options within Minecraft to see you know, what the options are available. But I think that there's a lot of potential here. So if anybody's interested in kind of helping with this aspect of it, feel free to reach out to me.
Great. I did have one final question here. Have you considered adapting the Chesapeake Bay program Bay Trends modeling package to the citizen monitoring data like you have on the CMC? And is there any availability of using or being able to share this data, I guess, as a R statistical or to be available so it can be analyzed through programs like R? Like statistical modeling, statistical analysis.
I'm not exactly sure how to answer that because I am not a modeling person. I will say we are continually working with the Bay program to integrate this data into the modeling, but I am not exactly sure how any of that actually feasibly happens or what it would take to change any part of that process to incorporate the CMC data into that modeling effort. So I can definitely look into it at the Bay program level and see and, you know, follow up with that question.
Great, Liz. Well, thank you for your time and for sharing this great growth of the CMC process. It's been amazing seeing how it has grown over the past years and it continues to grow. For our last speaker for today is Dr. Daina Henry. Dr. Henry will tell us about a fun and educational activity to teach youth about water quality. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Henry. She retired in 2013 from the College of William and Mary, where she served as an administrative and instructional faculty member. She has begun a new life as a master naturalist and has trained as a master gardener and a tree steward. I can tell from personal experience from working with her during my time at DEQ, she is very passionate about clean water. Dr. Henry has been leading a dozen water quality testers for the Peninsula chapter of the Virginia Master Naturalist Program. She currently serves as the outreach chair and is the past president of the chapter. She is also an obedient and loving servant of a white Labrador and 2 cats. Welcome, Dr. Henry.
Well, James, thank you so much for that introduction. And I do not know why my video is not showing up because my little camera light is on. So
we can see you.
Oh, can you? Oh, great. I want to thank you for the introduction, and I want to thank you for allowing me to be part of this event. It's really been a delight to hear everybody talking about education outreach and how important it is to get our message out to adults, citizens, high schoolers. You know, this new one that Liz has just proposed is just unbelievable. But I'm a grassroots person. I believe in starting it young, and this activity is based on elementary school children. Yes, elementary school children, because all elementary school children have either parents or teachers hanging right next to them. So it's an activity that allows everyone to learn something, because it's amazing how many parents have no idea what a watershed is. Like James said, we have 21 sites here on the peninsula. We are surrounded by the James, the York, and the Hampton Roads. We've been doing it for 7 years. It seems like forever. So we've been doing a lot of citizen science, but the activity I'm going to show you, it's on a video. We do it at local schools at 3rd and 4th grades. Takes about 25 minutes. And I also do it at after-school programs for disadvantaged youths. We also take it on the road to do festival. So and anytime there's a plant sale or a festival, we take out our little handy dandy little outreach and start educating people about the importance of water. So I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to let people view the video I put. If this is an interactive, this is where everybody gets involved. And so I had to put it on a video because there's no way a PowerPoint would ever give this any kind of justice. So Matt, take it away.
Hi, I'm Daina Henry. I am the Education Outreach Chair and past president of the Peninsula Master Naturalists. We are located in Hampton, Newport News, York County, and Poquoson. My passion is water quality and teaching children water quality education activities and safety. We had been doing educational activities with the local elementary schools, mostly 3rd and 4th grades. We also have participated in outdoor children's festivals. The kids love this activity, and where you have kids, you have parents or teachers always listening. You don't need much: a map of your waterway, some cheap toys, paper cups, and marbles. Being on the peninsula, the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries are important. Our map is of the Chesapeake Bay and its watershed, but you can do the same activities for your local watershed. There are 4 goals to this fun: learning the names of the 4 major rivers in Virginia, which is part of the 4th grade SOL, learning the diversity of animals in the watershed, biology and science, correctly locating your location on the map, geography, and lastly, the effects of upstream pollution and tides on the bay ecology. This is the map of the Chesapeake Bay watershed, which was created by one of our artistic members. The first activity that we do with the kids is for them to correctly place our homemade sailboats on the correct rivers. These sailboats have the names of the 4 rivers. The teacher chooses a student or a team of students to place the boat on the correct river. This is a great way of reinforcing the names of the rivers that they should know for the 4th grade SOL. Please remember your jacket: Potomac, Rappahannock, York, and James. The second part of this activity is a ring toss. The children stand here and toss the rings onto their favorite sailboat. It's not as easy as it looks. The second fun activity is Beanie Babies. There are a variety of animals here: some land animals, some water animals, some freshwater, and some saltwater. The idea is to give one to each child and have them place it where they think it lives. Here's an example of animals being placed on the Chesapeake Bay watershed map. Some are placed correctly, some are not. The idea is to be able to talk to the students about what animals live where and why the water is important. All our animals need access to clean water. Some animals live close to the water, like the otter. Some live in the water, some on the outside, but they all need clean water. One of the keystone animals for the Chesapeake Bay is the oyster. It helps clean the nutrients and pollution out of the bay, and why there's a big effort to help restore the oyster in the Chesapeake Bay. Make sure you count your beanies before and after you place them, because they do walk away. The third activity requires either marbles, bells, or some sort of token that you give to each child and adult. The idea is for them to place on the map where they think they live. It's amazing how many children do not know where they are on the Chesapeake Bay. Once each child has placed their marble or token on the map, talk about where they think they live, and then show them that we actually live right about here. and it's important to know where you live on the Chesapeake Bay. For the fourth activity, we're going to remove the boats to make it easier to understand the flow of the rivers and the tides in the Chesapeake Bay. For this fourth activity, you can use an item like paper or paper cups. What we're going to demonstrate is how pollution from upstream flows downstream to the Chesapeake Bay. Have the children take your paper cup, crush them, throw them on the land. At this point, we're going to pretend we're the Piedmont Mountains. And where does the pollution all go? It goes to the bay. So it's important what happens upstream because it goes downstream. Another portion about ecology is not only that pollution flows downstream with the rivers, but due to the tides, the pollution goes back upstream. When there's high tide, the pollution goes back upriver. So it's important not only to have clean water at the top, but also to make sure you have clean water at the downstream at the Chesapeake Bay. Okay. The Chesapeake Bay watershed encompasses 6 states besides Virginia: West Virginia, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and New York. What happens on any of these rivers and the Susquehanna in Pennsylvania all flows down to the Chesapeake Bay. I hope you have enjoyed this educational outreach activity, and I hope you can adapt it to your own waterways.
All right. Okay. That's my little spiel. It's a really quick activity, and the kids love playing ring toss. The kids literally, and parents literally have no idea where they live on the Chesapeake Bay, which is really kind of frightening. But it's a good way to get them started to thinking about the importance of keeping your water clean. As I said, we do we monitor 21 sites. We also do water cleanups, and it's amazing how many bottles of plastic water bottles we will pull out 3 or 4 times a year. So at this point, this is a really short presentation. If you have any questions or anything, please let me know.
Diana, that is a fantastic education exercise. Don't think I've ever come across one that is as effective and covers so many different things in one activity. It's truly outstanding.
Thank you.
Liz, do we have any questions?
Yep, we have a few so far. Do you have any idea of how many students you've reached with this program?
Probably 400 or 500.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, at the schools are usually, the classes are usually 30 apiece, and I will do 2 classes a day. After school programs, I'll do like a week long, and I will do different portions. When I bring it to festivals, 300 or 400 kids and parents are all tossing rings.
Yeah, this seems like a much more mobile activity than the Enviroscape that you can take to festivals.
Ours is painted on canvas, so I can literally roll it up, put the Beanie Babies in, and it's done.
Yeah, that's great. Are there any concepts that you seem, when you teach this, that students really seem to struggle with more than others, or are there any concepts that they really seem to get after this activity that really hits home for them?
The biggest thing is the idea of a watershed. That word means nothing. a lot of people say, I don't care about the water because I don't live on the water. Understanding the concept of watershed, and that's why that last activity is so important, is trash just flows downhill. And they get that idea. On top of this activity, I also do some warm water safety activities and cold water safety activities. I'm into kids and activities and safety. They're all so appreciative of the knowledge, and many are shocked that the parents and teachers are shocked that kids have no idea where they live on the bay.
Great.
That is,
Thank you.
again, just fantastic. I might have to steal your idea for my saltwater district.
Please do. I encourage people to make their own little map. Again, it's the SOLs. It was needing to know. They need to know. Please remember your jacket, the Potomac, Rappahannock, and York and James. So it reinforces what the teachers need to teach them.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome. If you have any questions, you can probably find me somewhere on the Peninsula Master Naturalist website.
All right, thank you. I want to express my appreciation and the Water Monitoring Council as well for our speakers today. Pardon me. Liz, can you continue? My apologies. One of the drawbacks of trying to do a webinar from work. But I do want to express our appreciation for all the speakers today. We do appreciate your time, or their time, and the information that they provided. I know I've personally learned a great deal from today's talks, and I'm sure everyone here has as well. I wanted to also thank all the everyone for joining us today and the interest in Virginia water resources by participating in today's conference. Thank you also for all of our partners who made this event possible, our speakers. In Henrico County, the Alliance Chesapeake Bay, the Virginia Water Resources Research Center at Virginia Tech, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality with funding from the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the Virginia Lakes and Watersheds Association, the Lake Anna Civic League, and members of the Water Monitoring Council Steering Committee who assisted with planning and implementing this event. It does take a lot of work to put on such an event, especially in these current times. A webinar is probably almost as much work as working in person. And we do appreciate all the generosity that people have provided to make this event possible. As a reminder, the Virginia Water Monitoring Council promotes information sharing among its membership and encourages collaborations among water monitoring programs in Virginia. A few final facts about the Virginia Water Monitoring Council. We have been in existence for 22 years. We have more than 700 members. Anyone with an interest in water monitoring can join the Virginia Water Monitoring Council. Membership is free. Members do receive weekly sets of announcements about water-related events, job opportunities, and publications on regional and statewide interest. If you're not already a member of the Virginia Water Monitoring Council, please consider joining us. Send your contact information to vwmc@vt.edu. You can learn more about the Virginia Water Monitoring Council from our website. The address of our website is www.virginia, spelled out VIRGINIA, WMC.org. To wrap up the 2021 Virginia Water Monitoring Council Conference, I have a few reminders. After the conference, we will send an email message with a link to the recorded presentations and an attendance certificate. We'll also include a link to a post-conference survey. Please complete the survey as it will be helpful for us to plan our 2022 conference. This concludes the 2021 Virginia Water Monitoring Council Conference. We thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you in person next year. Thank you.